Hi, happy Monday. Kanye West is back in the news, and it's not because of his awesome Rick and Morty sweatshirt. Oh, Rick! Oh, we gotta stop Kanye West from being anti-Semitic. It's my Morty impression from Rick and Morty, the show from Rick and... Every year or so, Kanye West has a new meltdown online that usually leads up to some new project or business venture from him. And the conversation goes the same way every time. Kanye is a very unwell person who surrounds himself with yes men who are too afraid to tell him that he's being horribly influential towards so many people. And although his mental illness is not his fault, it is his responsibility to not be anti-Semitic. Last time I checked, I don't think that's a side effect of any of the medications that Kanye was given, that he would be spreading anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. But hey, maybe this is all doctor's orders and this is the best for his health. Now, before we start with the antics, I want to give full transparency that I like Kanye West's music. I recognize his talent. I think he is undoubtedly a very talented person, and it's not a surprise that he became very successful because of his musical talent and his persona. But there's a big fat asterisk on that, which we will get to later, okay? I want to briefly touch on my thoughts on separating the art from the artist later in the video, but none of that really matters right now, because whether or not I like his music and understand the influence it has, it doesn't change what Kanye is saying right now and how it directly affects human beings who experience discrimination on a daily basis. Now, earlier this week, Kanye started his little escapade by dressing himself in several black models in White Lives Matter shirts. Now, there may be some new people to the channel, so I'm going to give a super basic and quick recap just to explain to people who aren't aware of all the funny little political terms going on here. Now, All Lives Matter, as you may have heard online, is a right-wing white nationalist slogan that was used to combat the Black Lives Matter movement and pin it as anti-white and violent. And this term was very commonly coined and popularized by white supremacists who were angry that black people were trying to not die by police. But we're talking about White Lives Matter, which is another level deeper than that, which is an even more bigoted anti-black slogan, which is spread by racist hate groups, including the Ku Klux Klan. This is a very common term for people who sincerely believe that the white race is superior and that it needs to be preserved. Now, I don't really think I have to explain why sporting a White Lives Matter shirt would be dangerous to black people. So Kanye West puts a bunch of black people in White Lives Matter shirts, and this part of right-wing culture isn't exactly new. Like, without getting into it too much, because I'm personally not that smart about the topic, black people have been used as pawns by the right-wing news cycle for ages. Every year we get a new token black person that represents right-wingers who tell us that the Black Lives Matter movement is a hoax, or that Bill Gates wants to put tiny little chips in our tiny little brains. Why do people talk about Bill Gates wanting to put tiny chips in our brains all the time? We need to start talking about how Bill Gates pins himself as this like golden boy of philanthropy, but he just uses his foundation as a way to sway global policy interest while denying funding towards abortion and claiming to be in support of climate change when the foundation has $1.2 billion invested in fossil fuels. He was also good friends with Jeffrey Epstein, okay? Okay, enough about dumb Bill Gates. Let's get back to the tokenization of black people in right-wing media. I know you guys were waiting for me to get back to that. Without over-explaining it, this shit is as simple as someone like Ben Shapiro saying, I mean, it is absolutely preposterous to believe that we could possibly hate black people. I mean, look at my friend Candace Owens, you know? I might not agree with the way she looks. Oh, it's funny because he's racist. Now, of course, the next logical step is for Kanye to go on Tucker Carlson and explain his thoughts on the White Lives Matter shirts. He said to Tucker, the answer to why I wrote White Lives Matter on a shirt is because they do. Which personally, I feel like that really goes without saying. I don't think society has ever told us anything else besides the fact that White Lives Matter. So I don't think we need Kanye to start sporting the shirt and telling us that they do. You know, I don't need to be reminded that this world thinks that White Lives Matter. I know it. Kanye said, I thought the shirt was a funny shirt. Tucker Carlson pushed Kanye West on why he thinks that people consider that a controversial statement, and Ye says it's because he's not acting in a way the media thinks he should act. Which I think if the general public also agrees that that's not the way you should act, and they think that you're being a bad person, then I don't know if it's the media at that point. Kanye talks a little bit about his whole thing with Trump that he had for a while. You know, you remember that thing that he did. He said he was told by multiple people that if I said I liked Trump, that my career would be over. My life would be over. They said stuff like people get killed for wearing a hat like that. They threatened my life. They basically said I would be killed for wearing the hat. Now, I think Kanye is at a bit of a misunderstanding here, because I don't think people were saying that he would get killed for wearing the hat, because he even quotes it here. They said stuff like people get killed for wearing a hat like that. Kanye, they mean that by you wearing the hat, you're spreading rhetoric that is going to harm people and get people killed. It quite literally does. Like, Trump has garnered a group of supporters that have killed and hurt people. The Grammy winner also covered other topics, including being anti-abortion, his ex-wife Kim Kardashian, and his thoughts on higher education in the black community. Thank you, Kanye. Very captivating interview. Now, for a lot of these comments, I don't personally believe like they deserve any validity or that they're worth talking about, like in terms of me explaining why they're wrong, because I don't want to entertain the idea that any of these ideas can be taken seriously or be seen as right, because it's just absurd. Now, I'll talk about this more, but no matter what Kanye actually believes, whether or not his head is in the right place or if someone else is feeding him this rhetoric, none of that shit really matters. I could not care less about Kanye or what he's going through at this point. It is the way that his beliefs are received by people around the world that is the most important thing. The way that the things he says are reflected in the real world, that's what's real. When it comes to real problems, real world politics, it's not about debating fallacies or dunking on soy boys or alpha males or whatever. All that shit's fun, but it doesn't mean anything. It is about the way that you talk to the world and how the world responds. And as we'll talk about soon, when you have millions of people around the world listening to you saying that like Jewish people are controlling you or whatever, like that's pretty fucking harmful. You saw what people like Andrew Tate did to a bunch of high school boys over the span of a few months, but think about one of the most influential people in the world pandering on a worldwide scale to thousands of people who are ready for another reason to be racist. But let's get into the real meat of the situation. Now, the next part of Kanye's little online meltdown is this tweet that he made recently where he said that he was a little bit sleepy tonight, but when he wakes up, he was going to go, quote, DEFCON 3 on Jewish people, which is by the rules of like normal people interacting online, like that's a bad thing to say. Oh, I'm glad you guys came to my YouTube channel out of all of the ones talking about this, so you could hear me tell you that very helpful information. Now, Kanye claims that he can't be anti-Semitic because black people are actually Jewish, which not only is wrong from a normal perspective because Jewish people also can still be anti-Semitic, but it's also like just wrong from like a logical perspective. Like Kanye West is not a Jewish person. Like he is very specifically like overly specifically a Christian man. And then he says, in reference, I assume, to Jewish people, you guys have toyed with me and tried to blackball anyone who opposes your agenda. Now, of course, Kanye's account was locked on Twitter after this, and he is not on the site at the moment, probably for reasons that have to do with spreading weird rhetoric about Jewish people. I would assume that's the reason why. Now, the Anti-Defamation League followed this up with basically saying that the idea that Jewish people hold some secret evil power and that they're disloyal and greedy is a huge anti-Semitic trope that has hurt a lot of people, and basically said that to have someone of Ye's size spreading these myths actually directly affects people, and it's really dangerous. Surprise! But also, this isn't really new. Even though this was a much smaller story, in 2013, Kanye West said that black people don't have the same connections that Jewish people have. And luckily, from what I see, Kanye's more tight-knit fans aren't really with him on this idea, according to a myriad of Reddit posts that basically say that people are here as a fan of Kanye's music, and that fans of Kanye who blindly follow his word when he does shit like this are not welcome in their community. But you do have people from other corners of the internet who are now fans of Ye because of what he's saying on shows like Tucker Carlson. Now, this leads us to the newest part of this story, which is a video that Ye put on his YouTube channel last night titled Last Week. It's basically like a 30-minute vlog, and it's just like a cosmic gumbo of a bunch of random shit that he like threw in there. Now, there's a lot to touch on, and I'm trying to make this video short because I'm trying to put it out on the day that I'm shooting it. Shout out to 1010. Am I right, guys? It's gonna be really bad if I don't get it out on 1010. But let's try to touch on everything lightly. Now, Kanye starts off the video with this bizarre real-life GTA style video that is done surprisingly well, where Kanye sort of like runs around and acts like a GTA character for over 3 minutes. Now, despite all the shit that we're talking about, this part of the video I actually think is a pretty great concept that's well executed, and there's a lot of funny little references in there, like how Kanye and his goons are running in place like against like shelves and shit. Now, it sucks that that's all under this big umbrella of him being anti-Semitic online. But we're gonna come back around to the art versus artist thing. Now, after this plays, there's about 1.5 minutes of a song snippet that he plays in the car, and then it cuts to this meeting he's having with, I think it's Adidas, but I'm not sure. If I can't really confirm. I think he's talking with Adidas because that's the brand that I don't know. He was with Gap, and then now he's talking to Adidas, and apparently they stole. I'm not here for that kind of news. Look it up. Look up that stuff. I don't I don't want to do it. But he basically cuts to this meeting that he's having with a clothing company where he talks about wanting to buy the company. And there's just like a shitload of this like cringe business person talk where it's all these like business guys that are too afraid to talk to Kanye like a real person, which I would too, okay? That's like the most unpredictable person ever. Now, 10 minutes into the video, we get this insane snippet where I think Kanye's showing like these two Adidas executives like an actual porn video. And he explains that the guy in the video has the same accent as one of the guys in the room. He's like showing him the video and he's like, this guy sounds like you.
He's got a Northern European accent.
Not very Christian, Kanye, not very Christian. And this part plays on for so long in the video. It's like uncomfortably long.
Yeah, come on. Doesn't he sound like the voice sounds similar? The voice sounds similar. Yeah.
And then like immediately transitions into how the people at Adidas are like ruining the partnership and ruining the business and all this stuff.
The voice sounds similar. Yeah. So basically, I'm only going to work at Adidas if he's a CEO. You guys have done wrong by the company, by the business, and by the partnership.
He's doing this like weird metaphor with the porn and how the girlfriend cheated on the guy and how this is like their worst nightmare. I don't really get all of that stuff.
So then the girl was like, well, I'm going to do the thing that's your like worst nightmare. This is your worst nightmare. Your worst nightmare is not me like hitting you. Your worst nightmare is not me playing the porn. Your worst nightmare is not me screaming. We've done all this. That's your worst nightmare.
And then one of Kanye's like yes men on his side starts talking to the Adidas execs about how they basically like kidnapped the children in Kanye's mind and how they stole his ideas and they need to like make up for it.
When someone steals this man's ideas, his creations, it's like you're stealing a child. These are all children of his mind, and you've kidnapped them. There are easy inspired derivatives that are making significant revenue because people can't tell the difference.
And it's just like a bunch of, you know, Kanye rant bullshit that we've seen in the past, but it does beg a larger question from me. Is it worth it for Gap or Adidas or whatever brand? Is it worth it for them to work with Kanye? And as much as I want to yell no and say that he's like obviously the most horrible person to work with, from a business perspective, it's probably always going to be worth it for a brand to try to work with one of the biggest celebrities and brands in the entire world. And I bet you they're taking the risk of him like doing horrible things in order to make a lot of money. But the secret is no matter what, you're always going to regret it. They are always going to regret working with Kanye. And that's because Kanye on paper is the worst partner you could possibly have in a business. Doesn't follow any script or plan, constantly unpredictable, always ignores release dates, which is a very important one because why would you ever work with someone who famously promotes shit that doesn't come out? Like that's Kanye's thing. That's like the number one way to not make money is by not actually putting anything out. Now Kanye starts ranting at this point about how he won't argue about money with people who are poorer than him, and then he just kind of takes off.
The king of culture, I gotta step up. I have to step up as the king of culture. King of culture. King of culture. What do you want? I'm not talking to you guys. I'm not arguing about money with people broker than me. I'm not arguing about ideas with people with lesser ideas than me. I'll be right back. We're just gonna take a time out.
But there is an interesting clip where he's talking about the clothing company and he actually says this.
So it's time for me to shut the fuck up for the first time. Do exactly what everybody's wanted me to do for the longest. It's just like, but I had to take it all the way to MSNBC for them to get them to listen.
Which does seem ironic, of course, but maybe he's like planning on doing it in the future, and we might be in luck. Then we cut to a video of Kanye at his daughter's basketball game, and it's really cute, but it's also very sad with the context of the rest of the video releasing. It sucks to watch a dad who seemingly truly does love his kids, but is so wrapped up in his own ego that he refuses to prioritize them and actually be a good father to them. You can love your kids all you want. You know, those are your kids. You can love them. But do you give a fuck about them at all? Kanye? Do you give any sort of fuck about them? Because he proves again and again that he doesn't. He can make up with Kim and go to his daughter's basketball game and be a good dad for a couple of hours, but when every other hour of the day is spent embarrassing your children on a public scale and promoting ideals that directly harm them because of the color of their skin, the color of your daughter's skin, that's when you stop deserving the love back. Kanye does not deserve his kids because he doesn't put those kids before himself ever. And until he learns how to do that, I just don't see a way that it's safe for him to be with his family. But at the end of the day, I'm just some random guy watching from the sidelines. I don't know these people. Wrong. Well, you're not wrong that I don't know them. I don't know them at all. But you're wrong about the fact that the audience does not matter in this situation. It is a common thing for people to look at celebrity stories and say that people don't know these people's real lives and they shouldn't get involved. And sometimes that is a correct statement to make. In this situation, it is not. The sidelines is the most important part of this. The way the audience responds to Kanye's rhetoric is why it is problematic. It will not physically harm someone. Someone is not going to die by physically just looking at Kanye wearing a White Lives Matter shirt. But that message not only holds emotional weight that does harm to people who see a black man sporting a shirt that says very anti-black rhetoric on it, but the message of wearing a shirt like that also spreads to impressionable people who will physically harm someone and directly hurt people because of Kanye's actions. And that is just a fact that has historically happened time and time again. When people spread rhetoric like this, bad things happen, people get hurt. Now I want to add, during the footage of the basketball game with Kim, Kanye played a song that's now muted in the video because it got copyrighted. I think he put like Kim's SNL monologue in there or something. But it had a lot of lyrics about Kim and how he needs to remove himself from the situation he's in so he can save himself and his family. And I none of that shit really means that much to me because it's not at all reflected in his own actions. But I still thought it was worth bringing up, I guess. Now, the debate of whether or not a listener should separate the art from the artist has been going on for years, and I'm way too tired to give a full rundown on it because this video is way longer than I wanted it to be. But let's just do a quick lesson. We'll talk about it for 2 seconds. Now, the question at play for a lot of people here is it morally okay to listen to Kanye's music when he has said so many awful and hurtful things over the years? On one hand, people don't really see an issue listening to his music. Whether or not you like him, Kanye is one of the most influential artists of our generation, and a lot of the music that people listen to today would not be the same without Kanye paving the way for that style of music. So from a historical perspective, Kanye's art is important whether or not it is aged badly. And if you like the music and you're not subscribing to any of his personal beliefs, then what's the issue? Now, on the other hand of the debate, listening to Kanye's music supports him and puts money in his pockets, and it can be seen as morally bad to listen to someone's music who is influential and successful because of their music. And the other part of that argument is tied to how much the artists themselves actually inject their personal lives and beliefs into their music. And Kanye has done plenty of this over the years. Every album he has that he puts out has a massive story behind it that directly influenced the way the music it was made, and knowing the story behind it changes the context of the music. And if an album like Ye is put out under the context that Kanye just said weeks earlier that black people chose to be slaves, is it okay to indulge yourself in that music? Now, this is what we call a hot button debate on the internet. And although there's a million more points I could argue for either side, and I'm sure I'm missing some of the more important parts of both sides, I don't really want to dive this deep into a topic that can be talked about for hours, so I'm going to try to make it quick. Now, I know this is a boring answer, but as with anything, there is extreme nuance to this argument for me specifically, and I'm always going to choose how I consume art on a case-to-case basis. It depends on how closely I identify with the artist, how closely the artist identifies with their music, the topics of the song, how the music ages when it comes to the growth of the person who's making the music. Some of my favorite artists I have immediately cut off and never listened to their music again because of bad things that I learned about them. And then there's other artists where I feel disconnected enough from the artist and the persona and whatever the funky antics or whatever you want to call it, where I can consume the art knowing that there's cultural value in what I'm listening to and that it has influenced so much of what I love now and what has changed my life, you know, in terms of music or whatever. Now, I don't know. I think this is like an issue that I'm always going to sway back and forth on depending on the situation, and I don't really know where I stand with it right now. It's kind of sad to me that music artists can connect with listeners in a deeper level than almost any medium in ways that like literally define people's lives. But at the same time, they hold the power to change the full context of all the art they put out in the past, and they can heavily alter the way that people feel about their music. Now, I guess the very simple thesis to all of this is that regardless of the way Kanye truly feels about these issues, none of that shit really matters. This is about how the audience interprets what he's saying as a whole. This isn't just a couple of woke anti-Kanye groups on the internet calling out a grown man on his bullshit. This is a bunch of people on the internet, including Kanye fans, yelling at him, telling him that the shit that he's saying is hurtful, and that's the bottom line. It is absolutely crossing a line to do and say things that not only put discriminated people at risk, but also his own fucking kids. I cannot find sympathy or care for someone's wellness who can't even prioritize his own children and protect them from hurting. Anyways, that's the news. I thought this would be like a 5-minute video, and I have a lot of editing to do, so I'm gonna head out, okay? If you haven't seen, there's been a lot of videos that I'm doing on other people's channels, and I think that you guys should totally check them out. I really love working with other people in person, and I feel like that's where I make my best content. And luckily for me, I'm moving to LA in a month. Big news, so I'll be doing a lot more of that. But for now, if you want some other in-person content from me, you should check out these 2 videos on the screen, both by channels that I really love and are run by the funniest people I know. You should also check out our newest podcast episode with Chad Shed, linked in the description below, and you should follow me on my social media, okay? That's it. Let's try not to be racist today. Is that cool? Okay? I'll see you guys later.